All right guys, I got a problem with the transmission in the Copo truck and I am going to attempt to fix it today. Not a huge deal, it just is not quite overheating, but it's running a little bit warmer than I would like. The trans temps, according to the factory gauge, get somewhere around like 180 to 190. I've probably snuck up on 200 a couple of times, and I want it to run like 140. That's kind of where my other truck runs. And for the most part, the transmissions and the torque converters are exactly the same between my two trucks. And the transmission coolers are the same. I have a TruCool 40K in both of my Silverados, but this one runs a lot hotter on the Copo truck. And part of the reason is definitely because of this heat exchanger I have in front of the transmission cooler. That's like 2¼ inches thick, and it definitely will reduce the airflow through the trans cooler. But I also have the stock transmission metal hard lines. They're running really close to the headers, and also we have the factory transmission cooler in the radiator still in the loop, where on my other truck, there is no factory transcooler in the radiator still present. And even though that one does have like a 4-inch thick intercooler in front of it, the trans temps on that truck, they're only like the kind of 140 range where I would like to be. So today we're gonna completely replumb the trans cooling system on the Copo truck. I'm still gonna use my TruCool 40K because that's a good cooler, but I'm gonna switch to some AN plumbing. I'll show you that in just a second, and we are gonna bypass or eliminate the factory trans cooler from the system. So first thing we gotta do is yank out the factory hard lines and try to catch all the fluid. All right, so we are bypassing the transmission cooler in the radiator, and I'm gonna leave these ports open, but just to stop them from like dripping everywhere, I'm taking this cooler clean stuff that I had sitting on the shelf. I had a spare piece of hard line. I'm gonna click it into the radiator, and if you watch here, we are just gonna flush that out. And on the other side, I'll show you in a second, I got the other hose I just pulled off running in a bucket. So we're just gonna kind of rinse this out. That way it won't drip. Other than that. Nothing I hate more than all the hoses dripping off. So the factory hard lines came out fairly easy. In fact, I think it came out a little bit easier than I remember the two-wheel drive lines coming out on the ugly truck. But when I have them laid out on the floor, you'll see kind of the abomination that I created because I had to modify them 2 different times. One for the transmission cooler install up front and one for the transmission itself. And every time you get a flare and put a union in there, and it kind of looks a little bit like a mess. So yeah, back here on the trans case side, this was the union I built to extend the rear fitting. This is an early model 4L80, and one of the 4L60 lines connected right up, and the other one was close, but not, it wouldn't work. Obviously, the late case 4L80, the rear cooler fitting is quite a bit longer. But so we added a couple of unions, flared it, and I had one where I just could not get it to stop leaking. Like, it wasn't bad, it just dripped a little bit, but those leaks bug me. And these factory quick connects, these were leaking a tiny bit too. And then on the front, we also did the same thing. We flared these, we made a junction for the hard line. Like, I built 2 special hard lines, which I love how they look. I'll put an insert shot in there to show you, but they connect from the TruCool just to the spot below the core support. So anyway, that's going to be all removed. We're bypassing the factory transcooler in the radiator. And this is what we're using. We got some Russel AN line. This is the black stuff. I like how that looks. We have these two fittings. These are a female inverted flare that'll connect to the male flare nut that we have on the lines. But if you're going to plumb directly into the TruCool, kind of like I did on my other truck, you would need a male 5/8 inverted flare fitting. But anyway, two fittings for the 4L80. These are both short ones because once again, we have an early model 4L80, but if you have a late model one of these fittings needs to be quite a bit longer. A couple of -6 hose ends, a couple of these generic Amazon hose separators, and some DEI Fire Sleeve, just to kind of keep things protected where the headers run, just because we don't want the hose to get hot. So let's build some hose. So first step, we're going to use these guys here to adapt the inverted flare to a -6 AN. All right, that's the old leaky style factory quick connect. And this is going to adapt it to a -6 AN. Much nicer. All right, so we have both ends, the transmission and the cooler adapted to -6 AN. Now all we can do is actually build the hose that connects the two. I like this stuff. It's kind of like the standard aftermarket plumbing solution. You know, hard lines are great, they're very durable, but I would basically have to build those from scratch, which would be a huge pain in the butt. So instead, we're going with AN. The only trick with this stuff is you just gotta make sure it doesn't like rub on anything that's moving. The big thing for me is like the steering. We got the idler arm that swings back and forth. We got the AC compressor on top, and there's like a little window where this hose will actually have to slide in between. But just kind of keep in mind what's moving and what's not, and you'll be okay. There we go. Just basically gonna make sure you get the hose bottomed all the way in the nut. Now, you don't have to use this stuff, but it helps. Now, this might be considered bad luck, but I am using an Earl's wrench on a Russel fitting. Hopefully, it doesn't cause any problems. Well, one last trick I wanted to share. Basically now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this up underneath the truck, kind of get a length and mark the other end, but I don't want to get any dirt or oil or grease inside the end of the fitting, so I just have these little AN plugs hanging around. So I'll just slide that in there like that. That way no dirt or grease or dust or anything can get inside my hose. Be having a few too many ice creams. All right, so we got the AN lines built and routed, but they're just kind of flopping around in the breeze right now. So I've got to build a couple of brackets. I think probably 2 or 3 places just to hold the hoses in place so they don't move around and chafe or rub on anything. The tightest spot is right under the AC compressor because you have the idler arm and you have the center link of the steering that moves back and forth. So I just got to kind of hold them up off of that, and then there's a few more places I just kind of want to tie them off. So I got some, I think this is just 1" by 1/8" steel. This stuff is pretty easy to fold and drill, and I'll just make a couple little brackets. It will tidy that hose up and make sure it never moves where it's not supposed to. Alright, so we got the truck back together. We are just going on our test drive. So what did we accomplish? Number one, we removed the factory transmission cooler out of the loop, the one that was in the radiator. Let's say the water on that side of the radiator is the cold side. It might be, 150, 60 degrees, something like that. Well, if the transmission fluid is cooler than that, it could warm back up. The other thing we did is we got rid of the factory steel lines that were very, very close to the header, which also potentially could have been heating up the fluid. I'm not expecting this to be like a cure-all of the temperature, but I think, or I hope, it will help. So all we got to do is drive through town just kind of at a normal pace. Stop and go traffic is where it would get the worst, and I'll update you guys as we go along. So I'm driving the same little loop that I always do when I just run to town, grab a bite to eat or whatever. And normally on a day like today, the trans temp will get up to about 180 to 190 if I'm easy on it, or if I'm a little bit more aggressive, it might bump up to 200. Now granted, it's only, according to the mirror, it's only 85 degrees out, where lately it has been a little bit warmer than that outside. But right now the trans temps have stabilized like at 160, which is probably about a 20-degree reduction, more or less, than where we were before. I even did a couple of spirited pulls just to kind of put some heat in the transmission. But overall, I think what we did helped. It definitely did not hurt. Now, for cold weather driving, some people will argue that you want to have that trans cooler in the radiator still in the loop to help things warm up. But I took it out on my ugly truck. I've driven that in like 10 degrees, and the transmission's still gets, I mean, not super warm, but it'll get like 120 or so. So yeah, about 160 is where we're holding. So I'm gonna say it worked a little bit, but I would be willing to bet if we pulled that big heat exchanger out or put a maybe thinner one that was taller, it would let more air pass through that into the transcooler. So anyway, yeah, I'm gonna call it a success. I want to say thank you guys for watching. If you're interested in the transcooler thing, I've got another video you should watch, the one where I actually installed the TruCool 40K on the front end. It was a bit of a challenge, but go check it out if you want. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon. Once again, I forgot to press record, so I'm starting the scene over.